As hard left activists continue their long march through traditional culture and institutions, the battle over language continues. We've heard before, haven't we, about attempts to replace words like women and mothers with language like birth givers and pregnant people as a means of creating a more inclusive environment. But a new study led by researchers from the US, Europe and Asia has argued that neutralising this language risks dehumanising women and would harm decades of work to improve the visibility of women. One of the authors of this report is breastfeeding researcher from the University of Western Sydney. Joining us now from Sydney, Professor Karleen Gribble. Well, thank you for your time, Professor Gribble. Tell us, if you can, about the findings of your paper.
Well, really, we were looking at just what the implications are of desexing the language of maternity. So if instead of talking about women and mothers, we're using other words.
This push to erase terms like mother and breastfeeding, it's been going on for some time. Why do you think the medical community has now started to push back?
Well, I think there have been concerns for a while that this has been an issue, but we really haven't seen it, I guess, demonstrated. And I think now, because there have been people who've been using this desexed language for quite some time, we've now got lots of examples of where this has caused problems in terms of clear communication, in terms of being able to understand what research is saying, and also in terms of the impact upon women of using language that we would consider to be dehumanising, referring to them by mentioning body parts and physiological processes. These are things that we've known for some time in medical care is not something that you want to do in speaking about individuals.
You would know the history of maternity and midwifery and other areas where women have fought for so long, basically to have a space where being a woman is celebrated. Maternity is now, nothing like it was when perhaps my mother was giving birth all those years ago. It's much more of a positive experience. Surely there would have been alarm bells to wind all of this back when this push on language began.
Look, to be perfectly honest, I think what people have been doing is wanting to actually ensure that a specific community that we do see as being vulnerable and as having special needs are having their needs accommodated. And people have thought that it was a good thing to actually do this in a widespread manner. I think what we've been arguing, at least, that there are real risks to doing that in our general communications, and that perhaps it makes more sense and perhaps it will work better for everybody if we can have, use sex language when we're speaking more generally about pregnancy, birth and breastfeeding, and use specific change language when we're speaking about the needs of people who are pregnant, breastfeeding, giving birth, but who don't wish to be identified as women or mothers.
Yeah, but you would know this as a university academic. You don't make the exception, which is transgender pregnant individuals, the rule, and dehumanise the vast bulk of pregnant individuals who are women and for many years have enjoyed the terms as their right of woman and mother and breastfeeding and all the other descriptors that we've just discussed about. I mean, we've made the exception the rule. I think we're starting to wake up to it.
Well, I mean, I think the difficulty really has been that there hasn't been much discussion that's been able to be happening. And that's why we wrote this paper, is really actually to broaden it out so that we can actually have the discussion about what the implications are, how we can best accommodate everybody and make sure that they have their needs met. Because regardless of how you identify, having a baby is actually really a time of great vulnerability. It's a time when you actually do need your systems, the communications to be well done, so that you understand what's happening, so that the people around you provide you with good care. It's really a very important time. And so this is why we need to have the discussion. And this is what our paper is about. It's about alerting to the fact that there are some issues here, that what's being called inclusive language potentially is not... sometimes it's not being inclusive. Sometimes it's being inappropriately inclusive, and sometimes it is dehumanising. And so we need to have the conversations so that we can work out how to do it better.
Look, I commend you for having the conversation. I think one of the concerns many people have had is that we've launched into this revisionism. We've changed the language of motherhood and midwifery and all of these things. And I put on the record, I've got a sister who's a midwife. We've made all of these changes without there being a community debate and discussion. And I think it's great that you've gone as a scientist or as a researcher into this space to have this debate and perhaps, check ourselves and wind some of it back.
Yeah, that's really what it's about. That's what our work is about. It's about us as a group, and there were 10 of us from obstetrics, midwifery, breastfeeding, nutrition and paediatrics who've all said, actually, we need to have a conversation about this because there are some unintended harms that are occurring. And we don't want that to be the case. We want to work out how to do this better.